Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name's Ben and we are talking the restoration and preservation of cult movies, specifically on disc, on high definition disc, Blu-ray and 4K. And this is a new regular feature called Watch Pile Wednesdays. And I'm sure like many of you movie collectors, Blu-ray collectors at home, you have a large pile of unwatched movies. This is an attempt for me to get through some of those and do a weekly roundup of a review of the highlights. I've picked three this week, three movies that I've watched in the last week, all of which I think are fantastic, all on really interesting Blu-ray labels, all of which have really great presentations on disc. So hopefully this will be a good recommendation for you guys. Let's go. So as I said, three movies, three reviews, three discs. If you like what you see on the channel, then please give us a subscribe or a like down below. That would be great. You can hit the bell and you'll be notified when we publish new content. I'm hoping to get 3 videos a week up on the channel, so that would be fantastic. Also, leave us a comment below. The thing I've always loved about doing podcasts, doing stuff like this, is building a community. And can't build a community without a two-way conversation. So please leave me comments down below. Tell me what you like on the channel, what you like about the movies, whether you've picked up any of the movies that I've recommended. That would be awesome. Let's dive in with a movie which I unboxed the other day as part of the Vinegar Syndrome January package. And as I said on that stream, a movie I'd seen before, back in the late 80s, early 90s on VHS. Haven't seen it since. And nostalgia is a funny thing when it comes to movies, right? It leaves us with memories, fond memories. Nostalgia can elevate movies that you revisit and completely disappoint you, and nostalgia has cast this rose-tinted glaze over it. And at the same time, it can you can revisit things, and nostalgia, you've completely underrated a movie, and maybe reapproaching it as an adult gives you new perspective on it. This is one of the latter for me, in the sense that it is a movie which I'd seen on VHS back in that peak period of horror comedy, of VHS, and I hadn't really come back to it. Hadn't really stuck with me. I didn't really remember much of it, other than it's a buddy cop movie crossed with a zombie movie. 1988, directed by Mark Goldblatt, Dead Heat. It is a fantastic film. A film which I think deserves to be held up alongside many of those late 80s splatter classics that have exceptional creature work. We'll talk about some of the effects work that happens in this movie in a minute. Mark Goldblatt really does a terrific job with this movie. Mark Goldblatt, for those of you who don't know, is one of Hollywood's leading editors. Up until very recently, he's still working. He did the Eli Roth Death Wish a few years ago. But all the way back, he was editing movies for Corman. He did... For Joe Dante, he did Piranha, The Howling. He then went on to edit for James Cameron. He did the Terminator 1, Terminator 2. He did Commando. I mean, he's done... Go look at his IMDb page. I mean, he has been directing major Hollywood... editing major Hollywood movies all the way back to the late 70s. He's only directed 2 films. This was his directorial debut, and he also did the Punisher movie with Dolph Lundgren, which I also have very fond memories of and haven't revisited since the days of VHS, but a movie I want to go back to. Stars Treat Williams and Joe Piscopo, and it is, as I said, it's a buddy cop movie, it's an action movie, it's a horror movie. It is, which I didn't realize or I didn't remember, it is essentially a remake or a riff on the noir movie DOA. That movie in which someone finds out that they've been poisoned, and then they have 48 hours in which to find their own killer. This is essentially a twist on that, or a more literal twist on that, where someone gets killed and becomes reanimated. This is the Treat Williams character, becomes reanimated, becomes a zombie cop, but he's deteriorating. He's literally going to fall to pieces within a certain number of hours. I think it's 14 hours, something like that. And so he has that period of time to find out who is resurrecting criminals, which are robbing banks all over the city of Los Angeles. Treat Williams is fantastic in this. He's really game, and he gets to have a ton of fun as he becomes zombified. Joe Piscopo is less good. I'm not a huge Joe Piscopo fan. I don't find him very funny, and he seems to be doing in this an extended Andrew Dice Clay impersonation, right the way down to the leather jacket with rolled up sleeves and the big shoulder pads. He's doing a lot of kind of chauvinist jokes that don't land while winking at the camera. It's a little bit grating, frankly, but he is far from being the star of the movie. Treat Williams is definitely the main character in the movie. You get an amazing cameo performance from Vincent Price in one of his last roles. And the movie, it starts as a cop movie, it then becomes a horror movie, it becomes a little bit of a mad scientist movie. All the way through, however, is the presence of another star, and that is Steve Johnson, who leads the effects work on this movie. Steve Johnson is really one of the most important effects creature artists, or one of my favorites from that era, in an era that has so many rock star special makeup effects guys, whether it's Rick Baker, Rob Bottin, John Carl Buchler, there's so many of these guys. Steve Johnson, for me, in terms of the way his creations look and appear on screen, you can kind of see his creations and recognize them. Obviously, he's best known for being the creator of Slimer on Ghostbusters, and actually that kind of rubbery monster is something that's very consistent through his movies. The creatures in Big Trouble in Little China have actually very much precurse a lot of the stuff in Dead Heat. There's a lot of similarities, I think, between some of the creations in Dead Heat and Big Trouble in Little China. But the effects work is incredible in this. You get from kind of splattery gore, there's endless shootouts, and the great thing about the shootouts in this movie is because the cops and the criminals often taking place in the shootout are undead, it means they can shoot each other, tons of squib work, blood going everywhere, and no one's dying. So you can just shoot people endlessly, which is, they clearly have a ton of fun with. The other stuff is just the amount of creations in the movie. There's a reanimated 300-pound guy who's got 3 faces. There's an incredible sequence in a Chinese restaurant in which all of the animals, dead creatures in the Chinese restaurant come to life, including a gigantic side of beef, ducks, chickens. It's wild. And then there's a sort of reverse transformation sequence at the end where a character who is, it turns out, has been a zombie all along, starts to physically deteriorate, and their body starts to melt. Any effects movie in the 80s, the traditional kind of body melt type movie, Street Trash obviously being the Citizen Kane of the body melt movie. This has a fantastic array of all physical effects work showing someone literally falling to pieces. It's incredible. There's an amazing interview with Steve Johnson on the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray 4K, in which he walks through a lot of that work and tells you how they did it, and it's genuinely incredible. Still absolutely holds up and is pretty magical, actually. So I love this movie. It's a great action movie. It's a great horror movie. It's a sporadically very funny comedy, and it's also 83 minutes. I mean, talk about pacing. I've been thinking a lot about movie length recently. My son took me to see the new Spider-Man movie, which is over 2.5 hours long. Thank heavens for this era of the 80s horror and action movie where 80 to 90 minutes, bang, tight. This movie, I mean, it benefits from being directed by an editor, I think, because it is tight. Doesn't waste a minute. It gets in, gets out, has a ton of fun in its 83 minutes, and doesn't waste a moment. So yeah, unreserved recommendation for Dead Heat. The Vinegar Syndrome disc that they've put out bodes really well for what might be next from Vinegar Syndrome, because they are starting to, as they've profiles raised, they're getting access to these types of movies. This is traditionally the type of movie that'd be put out by a Shout Factory or someone with a bit more studio product in their lineup. The fact that Vinegar Syndrome's starting to get access to titles like these is tremendously exciting, I think. Okay, next up, I've chosen something a little bit different, although somewhat related to the previous title, in that it is on one of Vinegar Syndrome's partner labels, Fun City Editions, a label of which I'm a huge fan. And that is 1975's Smile, directed by Michael Richie. This is a movie which I had heard a bit about, but I have never seen, and had never seen until a few weeks ago. And wow, it is a real lost 70s classic, a movie which I think deserves to have a big audience, or certainly a significant cult audience. It is funny, it is satirical, it is consistently full of brilliant performances from some of America's best character actors. And it is essentially a satire set in the town of Santa Rosa in Northern California, not far from where I actually live. And it is all set around a California beauty pageant, Young American Miss, which is happening. It's an annual event in this town, and so girls are coming from all over California to compete. And it's an ensemble piece. It follows the girls, it follows the people putting on the tournament, the contest, and two of the main organizers, Big Bob Freelander and Brenda DiCarlo, who are played by the majestic Bruce Dern, and Barbara Feldon, who I only really know from being in the TV series Get Smart. It is just a wonderful film. It is probably best compared, I think, to, if you think of some of those Altman movies like Nashville, it has a similar feel to it, although it's a lot less of a political satire than, say, something like Nashville. It doesn't have quite that political edge that Altman comes to with those types of things. It is much more of a human story, and it's also much more of a straight comedy. It has that feel of Fly on the Wall, building a patchwork of stories as it tells the story of the girls who come to town. Some of the girls played by some really who would go on to be very famous. There's a young Melanie Griffith is in it. A young Annette O'Toole is in it as one of the girls competing. And I just loved it. It's beautifully shot. Conrad Hall, one of, I think, America's best cinematographers, who shoots like natural light so well and so stunningly, and really shown off well on this new Blu-ray, which is I think it's restored from its 35mm into positive. So I love this movie. I think it will and deserves to find a bigger audience now that it's on a boutique label like this. And amazing extras as well. It doesn't have a huge amount of extras, has a new commentary, which I haven't listened to yet, by Pat Healy and his brother Jim Healy, filmmaker and curator. And a really fantastic, which I have watched, interview with Bruce Dern. And frankly, I would watch hours of interviews with Bruce Dern, because he's just effortlessly charming, has very fond memories of working on the movie, working with Conrad Hall. And yeah, look, Michael Richie is one of America's, I think, underrated directors. He's known for his comedies, the high-profile comedies like Fletch and Wildcats. He's known for his high-profile comedies like Fletch and Wildcats, the Goldie Hawn movie, and sports movies like Downhill Racer and Bad News Bears. But but all of those I love, actually, very much. And I just think he deserves a bigger audience and deserves a bit more acclaim as one of those filmmakers in the 70s who maybe people don't talk about as much, but was doing really vital work. Okay, from Smile to something very, very different indeed. And, you know, I think one of the things that many folks on podcasts, the podcast that I've been involved with a long time, Mondo Movie included, love to talk about is bonkers movies, brain melters, wacko, off the wall, stuff where you watch it and it's just WTF, what am I watching? It's not really a genre, but it's certainly a tone of movie, which when you discover them, you can't wait to share them with your friends. And this is one of those, and it's American Rickshaw from 1989, directed by Sergio Martino, one of those directors who is best known, I guess, for his horror work. Torso, something we reviewed on Mondo Movie, Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, All the Colors of the Dark, Case of the Scorpion's Tail, all very well known, all talked about. Giallos, and a bunch of crime movies as well, Italian crime movies. Violent Professionals is one I picked up recently. I think it's a Code Red disc. I haven't seen it yet. And also one of our favorite westerns. Back in the Mondo Movie days, we reviewed a bunch of spaghetti westerns. A Man Called Blade is one of our fave spaghetti westerns. But like so many directors from Italy of that period, he worked on a ton of different varied genres. There's many more films in his filmography than the relatively few high-profile horror and crime ones. American Rickshaw is not really like anything else he made. It's from 1989. It's shot in America with a largely American cast. Stars Mitch Gaylord, who was a champion gymnast, U.S. national team men's gymnast. Weird trend, well, not really a trend. I can only think of one other of trend in the 80s of casting high-profile gymnasts in thriller action roles. The other one is another Mondo Movie favorite from when we were podcasting last, and that's Kurt Thomas from the movie Jim Carter, which, if you haven't seen, is just, and also fits into this genre of kind of like, what the hell were they thinking, blending gymnastics with martial arts. Describing the plot of American Rickshaw isn't really going to do it justice, but I'm going to start just by reading the letterboxed plot description to you. After a stripper tricks him into filming a sex tape, Scott Edwards, a Miami rickshaw runner, becomes embroiled in the murder of a televangelist's son when he inadvertently takes the wrong videotape. With the help of the stripper and an Asian witch, Edwards sets out to clear his name while avoiding the assassin, dead set on retrieving the tape. That's essentially the setup. It's kind of a wrong man type thriller plot with this young guy trying to clear his name. What that maybe hints at with the mention of an Asian witch is the layer of hokey cod Asian mysticism that gets layered over the top of this. It's very clear that the producers of this had seen the success of Big Trouble in Little China a few years earlier. And right the way down to the appearance of the Mitch Gaylord character, who dresses pretty similarly. He even has a tiger on his wife beater, pretty similarly to the Kurt Russell character in Big Trouble in Little China. So it has this kind of weird layer of mysticism. There is a mystical jade statue which becomes the sort of MacGuffin, the key focus of the plot about pretty early on, in which it without revealing too much, there are mystical powers harbored within, and Scott has this psychic connection with this elderly Asian woman, the Asian witch there, who he has rescued, or actually hasn't even rescued. He's kind of helped her out of his rickshaw in slow motion in the rain. And for some reason, because of that, he becomes psychically connected to her. And so all the way through the movie, we keep cutting to her witnessing the events that we're seeing in the movie. And, either smiling or frowning or reacting in some way. There is so much that's weird and off the wall about this movie. The line readings, it's clear that this is being made by someone who doesn't have a great grasp of English, in terms of the actors all being Americans speaking English and delivering really strange line readings all the way through it. Our hero at one point threatens someone with a dirty needle, which might be infected with AIDS, and uses it. I mean, it's just weird. Like, the stuff that happens throughout this film, there's a body, someone transforms into a pig demon at the end of this movie. Donald Pleasance delivers an incredibly strange performance. He's trying to do a southern accent, and bless him, Donald Pleasance isn't ever really great other than doing a Donald Pleasance accent. There's also a fantastic flashback where we see the Donald Pleasance character playing the younger version of himself, but rather than casting someone younger, they just let Donald Pleasance do it with this terrible wig on his head. So it is totally wacky and off the wall. It's one of those movies that you watch it at home, it might be a 3-star movie. You'll enjoy it. There'll be some laugh out loud moments, but this is the kind of movie that gets elevated by watching it with a group of friends. So I would strongly recommend, as hard as that might be currently, to watch this with like-minded people, because it's definitely a film that is best served by that. Cauldron Films, who have put this out, I was listening to Jesse from Cauldron on a recent Just the Discs podcast, and not only was this the movie that inspired him to set up Cauldron Films with his partner, it was their first release they put out. So I haven't caught up with any of their releases yet. I do have a pre-order for their upcoming Contraband restoration, the Lucio Fulci crime movie, which I'm really excited about. That's definitely one of my favorites, which I can't wait to see what they do with it, because the restoration on American Rickshaw, which again I'm imagining is a film probably little seen since the VHS days, is tremendous. Has a really, really terrific restoration, which I believe they've done in-house. Has a commentary with Sam Deegan and Kat Ellinger, which I haven't heard yet, but I'm sure will be fantastic. And you get the Projection Booth podcast episode all about American Rickshaw. So you're definitely going to get everything, a really great kind of background to this movie, the cult fandom that exists around it. But it's definitely one of those WTF crazy movies that I definitely recommend digging out. So 3 movies there, 3 recent picks, 3 things on 3 different labels. Join me next Wednesday. I'll pull out another 3 highlights of stuff I'm watching on current boutiques. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks very much.